Hi, my name's Hannah Cho, and I'm an optometrist, and I'm here to interview Dr. John Larcabal. And so we're at his office right now. We're just going to ask him some questions that I have and also that you guys had about the business side of his practice. And I'm going to kind of go over a little bit of the background of Dr. Larcabal that I was able to find. So let me go over like a quick snippet of it.
Sure.
So what I found was you graduated from Brigham Young.
I did.
Zoology, which I thought was very interesting and very unique.
Yes.
SECO grad, and you've been teaching practice management since '93.
Correct.
So a lot of years here.
Many years.
Yes, and you actually were my professor. You were my professor.
I was.
Right? Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do a lot of speaking engagements, both in America and other parts of the world.
I do.
And you're currently the director of the SECO Vision Screening Program, right? At SECO or?
Not currently. I do vision screening programs, but not with SECO currently.
Okay.
But I had in the past.
Okay. And then you were past president of COA, which is California Optometric Association.
I was.
And then also California Vision Foundation, which is a nonprofit.
Correct.
Okay. And you're still doing that too?
Yeah, I'm the immediate past president currently.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. And then also have a couple practices, one here in Brea and then one in Norwalk.
That's right.
Okay. And we'll go more into detail on that soon. And then you're also bilingual with Spanish.
Sí, that's true.
Muy bien.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And then you do a lot of humanitarian stuff. You've been to a lot of places. I don't know if you can see the map behind. That's where Dr. Larcabal pinned places in the world that he's been to, and so we'll take a picture of that afterwards. And then, anything that I missed?
No, that's fine. That covers most of it.
Okay. Let's kind of start with the business side of it.
Sure.
In terms of the practices you have. Can you tell me a little bit about how you started the practices and which one came first and how you started it?
So originally after school, I was working for a doctor in Norwalk, and there was another practice that came up for sale not too far away. And actually one of my classmates asked me to check on it because he knew I worked nearby. So I checked on that practice, and it seemed like a good opportunity. My classmate decided not to buy it, so I ended up purchasing it, and I've been there 28 years now.
The one in Norwalk?
The one in Norwalk.
Okay.
But I lived here in Brea, so I had a lot of patients driving from here to Norwalk. So I decided to get something closer to home, and then I found this building for sale, so I purchased it and then started a practice here cold about 12 years ago.
Okay. And then, so this one's 12 years old. The other one, how old is the other practice?
So I've been there 28 years, but it had been there 20 years before me.
Oh, okay.
So it's an older practice.
Okay, so you bought the practice and then you built it up to how you wanted to
I did.
have it run? Okay.
Yes.
All right. And then I was looking over your reviews online. So I looked at your Yelp and your Google reviews, and all of them are stellar.
Oh, good.
All 5-star reviews, a lot of really great reviews. And I think these are the ones that the patients typically highlight. Its customer service is great here in both practices. The optometrists are very friendly and very professional. And then you guys have state-of-the-art equipment. And you guys, you showed me a little tour of your office, and I was able to see a lot of them. And then the Brea practice specifically, you have a bunch of different types of optometry being practiced here. So you have peds, VT or vision therapy, neuro also. And I saw that, was it iBrain? The
iBrain Medical,
okay,
yes.
iBrain Medical. And then you guys do specialty contact lenses with Dr. Matsui.
We do.
Okay. All right. So, can you tell me a little bit about how you became a professor? And you're a professor in practice management at the SECO.
You know, coincidentally, I had purchased my practice, as I mentioned, a couple of years after school, and I ran into Dr. Shaw McMinn at an optometry meeting. We were chatting about that.
Yeah.
So he asked me if I could come and lecture to the students about what my experience was like in going through and purchasing my own practice.
Sure.
So I did. And I guess apparently I did okay, because he asked me to do that the following year and asked me to become more involved. And then after a number of years, then I just got more and more involved until I became the instructor of record in all 3 classes.
Okay.
So I've enjoyed it very much. It's nice to be involved with the students.
Yeah, and so you get to meet all the new students, and I'm sure they have a lot of recurring questions and all the same worries. And
they do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll go into that later on. Let's go a little bit more into like the efficiency part of it. The first question I have is, For efficiency, how important is it for your practices?
I think the bigger you get, the more important it is. When you're not too busy, you don't have to be as efficient because it doesn't matter. You have a lot of downtime. But as the practice grows, we become more, more or busier, then it's more important to have those efficiencies. Otherwise, the quality of care drops significantly pretty quickly. So efficiency is a key point as the practice gets bigger to make sure it runs smoothly, and then you continue to provide the quality care that you want to provide to your patients.
I would think it's more important once you have multiple locations, right, to implement different efficiencies that worked at the first location and to translate it to the second location.
Absolutely. So you want to make sure that they're both efficient, because otherwise either one would suffer by the lack of that.
Right.
Very much so.
So this one was started cold. So were you able to just take all the office flow that you had in your original practice and kind of mirror it here? And was it able to run right smoothly, or did you have to adapt it?
We had to adapt because we weren't as busy. Being a new practice, we had maybe 500 patients from this area that were driving there, so we had a small base to build upon. But we were in very much of a growth mode because that was a small practice. So we did a lot more marketing here to bring in new patients that we didn't need to do in Norwalk. It was already established. So it was a little bit different in the sense that the problems were different here. We want to get more patients here. Over there, we want to be efficient, take good care of the patients that we had.
Okay. So once it started growing, you're able to put in that efficiency that you learned at the other practice.
Exactly. And then this one has grown substantially to the fact that it's actually larger now than my Norwalk office. Because I think the demographics here and just the location has helped us tremendously.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I mean, this is only half or a third of the
time. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me some examples of how you've improved efficiency in your office flow?
Sure. I think one thing is by cross-training the staff, so that way people get busy doing different things, but they can all do the pre-testing. They can all help dispense. They can all input, basic VSP charges and things like that. That way, if somebody's busy in one, anybody else can step up to help a patient who might walk in, who might need pre-testing, who might need help with dispensing. So that's probably been one of the better things we've done, is just cross-train so all the staff are capable of stepping into whatever's needed at that moment.
Do you ever notice that when you cross-train, there were some parts where the ball was dropped because other employees expected someone else to finish the job, or there wasn't one person dedicated to that task?
It could. So now that person knows that when they're given that responsibility, they have to stay through it to completion.
Okay.
So they'll come in and stay with that patient, make sure exactly, so it doesn't fall through the cracks.
Okay.
Is it perfect? No. There's still times we find, something maybe didn't get billed like it should have, because of the passing that along and anticipating it to be taken care of, and there might be a lack of communication. So you try to catch those early on to make sure you can overcome those.
Yeah, I think that's good to make sure that one person finishes, because sometimes that drop off.
Yes, very easy to happen.
Yeah. In terms of also efficiency, what kind of programs have you implemented to increase it? You were talking a little bit about Opto, the practice management software.
So the software helps tremendously. Also, some things have helped is pretty extensive pre-testing. So we'll do, of course, NCT for the pressures, autorefractor, fields, color vision, blood pressure, and also Optos we do on everybody every year. So that saves us time, like when we're doing the examination, not having to do maybe direct ophthalmoscopy. We can show the patient the retina and do it much quicker than if, so things like that help save a little bit of time, and then, collectively saves us sufficient amount of time.
You guys still do color vision for every patient?
Most of them we do, just initially when they come in, just to let them know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we still try to do that for them.
Yeah, I mean, at school you're taught to do that, and I did it at my own practice for about 3 years, and then after it kind of tapered off. Even stereo started tapering off a little bit.
Very much so.
It's good that you guys continue to do that. And then, is there anything that you wish you could see your practice management do in terms of making your job easier as a business owner, more efficient?
I can't think of anything offhand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You were talking about how you marketed your practice, this one specifically. What do you think was the best marketing strategy that you did?
Word of mouth always works the best, providing good quality care. And then initially we would ask our patients at the exam, how their exam was, if they have any questions, and then let them know that we're accepting new patients as well. And if any of their family or friends need help, we're happy to do that as well.
Okay.
So we did a lot of internal, but initially, since it was a new practice, we did external marketing as well.
Right.
We got involved with the local school district, with the Chamber of Commerce, and things like that as well.
Wow. So a lot of person-to-person kind of contact.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, of course, now the internet has moved in, it's much more substantial than it was initially.
Right.
Yeah. To show my age, it wasn't even around when I started in Norwalk. But it was for Brea, so then trying to do more things, internal or media, social media marketing and things like that. We do much more of that now, of course, than we did 5 years ago or 10 years ago, for sure.
Who takes care of your marketing or social media? Is there someone designated?
So we have a staff member who's designated to help update that periodically and try to keep it fresh as possible.
Okay. Do you guys focus on Facebook, your
Facebook,
website?
Twitter, website.
Oh, Twitter too? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we
Instagram? I saw.
we probably haven't, to be honest. That's not sort of part of my jurisdiction. So I let the younger staff and doctors take care of that.
I'm sure they do a good job, because I saw that chalkboard that had that hashtag, and so I could tell you guys have a vibrant Instagram presence. For the business side, have you joined the $1 Million Practice Club?
We have.
Club. Okay.
I guess.
Okay.
Twice, I guess now.
All right.
I didn't know there was a club, but if there is a club,
you're part of it.
We would be part of that.
Okay. Yeah. And then, what do you think made your practice different or do better than like the average practice in America? I saw a stat; it was about 600,000 in terms of gross. What do you think differentiates?
I think a couple of things. By having multiple doctors,
okay.
I think helps provide more services. So now we can provide vision therapy, specialty contact lenses. Neurological lenses as well, like that. So I think by offering more services and within one location, that helps it to grow.
Yeah.
Also offering extended hours. So we're here open late Thursday nights and Saturday hours as well. So by having extended hours, that helps as well.
What time do you guys close on Thursdays?
At 7.
Oh, that's pretty late.
So most nights we're open and we close either 5 or 6. Thursdays at 7, and the Saturdays we're half a day. But that way we catch those people who don't want to miss work during the week. Okay. Those are always busy days.
Okay. So when you first started, it was kind of more of a family practice, right, for this location, and then you kind of expanded the different
both
specialties?
So when I started Norwalk, it was just me for many, many years. And I brought other doctors in and started to expand it with services and things as well.
Okay. And then previously you were mentioning you had a partner, so is it a partner for both locations or your original location?
So Dr. Almanza, the smartest practice management thing I've ever done was bring in Dr. Almanza. Diana Almanza, she's phenomenal. But she was one of my students at SCCO who had experience working in doctors' offices. And I was just impressed with her, so when she graduated, we opened this office cold.
Together?
We did.
Okay, wow.
And then she worked in my other office, and then a number of years later, I sold her half of that practice. Okay. So we're full partners in both practices now.
So 50-50.
We are.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it, because they always say it's kind of like marriage, right?
Very much so. Yes.
Is there any pros and cons to the partnership?
Absolutely. Ours have been very positive the whole way. You want to make sure you have somebody who has similar philosophies. And luckily, Diane and I see eye to eye on things. And so it's worked out very, very well. For both of us. Okay. So, but yes, like in marriage, if you have conflict of personality differences, then it makes it much more difficult.
Right.
And then she primarily runs the Brea office, and I primarily run the Norwalk office. So we divide up the responsibilities, so neither one is overwhelmed with a lot to do.
That's good.
Yeah.
And then in terms of, because usually for business partners, there's somebody that's a little bit more analytical and likes doing the numbers, and there's the other person who's better at sales or business, and so is that kind of what you find? Yeah,
because each presents their strength a little bit. So I would be more towards the number side of it, and looking at those. She's more at the marketing, the good positive personality, all that aspect of it, staffing. So we kind of divide up the responsibilities based on our individual strength and likes.
Yeah, that's good. It sounds like it's a good partnership.
A very good partnership.
Yeah. But I think it also makes it more fun having someone next to you, not just doing it all on your own and taking all the stress on yourself.
Oh, very much so. Yes. And then also we brought in Dr. Matsui, who's phenomenal. That way, we can, if you see something I'm not sure about, it's nice to get somebody else's opinion.
Right.
Who's right here.
Yeah.
And kind of kick ideas around. If you see something unusual, you can bring them in to take a look at the Optos or whatever it might be.
Right.
To get another opinion is always nice.
Yeah, instead of having to refer out, which is what I usually had to do before.
Exactly.
So do you have a wow factor for your practice? Like something that patients usually comment on, or they always, there's something that just stands out from the other practices?
I would probably say the Optos is something that most of the patients are impressed with. Also, we have an aberrometer that we use kind of as auto-refractor that's very high-tech. So patients like that helps us get their exact prescription, of course. That's what they use for LASIK, to tell the laser how to design the laser the corneas. So things like that, and when we explain it to them, I think that's what makes the difference. I think a lot of doctors have a lot of tech, but they don't explain it to the patient, so it doesn't have that kind of, wow factor that it could have.
Okay.
So we try to make a point to explain what we have and how it's helping them in their eye examination.
So spending more time with patients and giving them more education.
Exactly.
Right?
And by having the Optos and these other things gives us time to spend with the patients explaining those diagnoses and recommendations.
Yeah, and I think along that line, the state-of-the-art equipment, like having the latest and greatest also helps a lot because it makes you stand out from.
It does. And a lot of times when they come, they haven't seen that before.
Right.
Then it makes them know that we're trying to be state-of-the-art, providing the up-to-date services. And then they in turn tell their family and friends, and that helps the practice to grow.
Yeah, I think that's a good investment back into the practice.
Very much so.
Keeping up to date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to mention, like the Optos, for example. Most practices charge for that because it's not inexpensive. We almost use it as a marketing tool, so we do it free. It's part of the eye exam.
Okay.
And then we use it because it saves time. So it allows us to see one or two more patients a day, which in turn pays for it itself.
Yeah.
But then also as a marketing thing, it kind of ties them into the practice. They know that retinal photos are here, or the retinal laser scans are here. They would probably be hesitant to go somewhere else because they know all the records are here. So it's kind of a marketing tool as well.
Yeah, I think that's good. It really makes it seem like you care about the patient's health and you're not charging them for something that other places charge for.
That's our approach.
That's it. Yeah, I think that's definitely a wow factor. Okay, so what is your optical capture rate percentage-wise, do you think?
I think it's quite high. I would say 80%.
Oh, okay.
Most of our patients, to be honest, they have VSP or IMED, those are the biggest ones. So most of them are incentivized to get their glasses here because it saves to them. So we have very few patients walk out with their RX, so we're very fortunate here.
Okay.
And I think we have a pretty wide selection of frames.
Yeah.
So I think that helps keep them in too because they can find something that they like here.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty high. That's good. And then what percentage of your revenue would you say is routine versus medical or specialty?
I would say the bulk is routine. Probably 90%.
Okay.
10% would probably be medical and specialty like sclerotic lenses, scleral lenses, things like that, vision therapy. But the bulk of it is, the bread and butter is just routine eye exams and things that are discovered from that.
Okay. That's good. All right. And then can you share your secrets or tips for your success? So general, but what is one thing that what's one thing that you heard? It's a mentor, or you heard of something in school maybe that kind of made you keep going. What keeps you motivated?
I would say maybe what I try to share with the students as well is always put the patient's needs first. Always recommend what is best for the patient. Don't, regardless of economics and how it affects you, and the money will follow. But as long as you put the patient's best interest first, the finances will take care of themselves. Yeah. So that would probably be something that I've heard and try to pass on to the students as well. Okay. Yeah. So whenever I see an older patient, I think, what if this were my mother? Right. What would I recommend for her? Yeah. And if somebody, a colleague, if it was my brother, somebody younger, if it was my child, what would I recommend would be in their best interest? Yeah. And then that's what I recommended. Yeah, that's good. I think for business owners, sometimes it's hard to separate, how their financials are doing versus, what's best for patients. But I think it's true. If you take care of your patients, then you'll be taken care of because it's a very trusting relationship. Very much so. And then offer and let them know there are different price points. They want to progress at different levels of those to help meet their needs. So it's not just the most expensive one, but we have other options for them as well. Yeah, that's good. Having like a wide range of selection. Yeah, exactly. All prices. So I don't know if this question's a little hard because I don't know if 5-10 years down the line, who knows what's going to happen. But if you're not going to retire and you're still working in about 5 to 10 years, what do you think you would want to change in your office to make sure it's staying relevant and within kind of the direction where it's going? Because nowadays you have all these online companies, or you'll have you can get an eye exam on the phone. There's just a lot of crazy stuff going on. So any input on what you think the private optometrist should do to kind of prepare ourselves for the future to stay? Sure. I think a couple things is, providing personal care. Okay. People like that. Don't mind me asking, what did you buy your shoes online? No, actually I tried it. I tried them on. School. I mean, not school, at the store. At the store. You probably could have got those online as well, maybe even for less. But you went somewhere where they had some personal connection, you could try them on. I think that's going to be true. People still like that personal connection and trying things on to see what they're like, either be glasses or shoes or whatever. So although there will be a certain percentage of people that will buy online, the majority of people, I think, would like to have that personal communication with their doctor, and that relationship, they'll keep coming back.
Okay.
But I think you need to be aware of changes going on. You know, technology, make sure that you're on the forefront of that, so they don't go somewhere else because somebody else has something more advanced than you.
Right.
But I think developing those personal relationships are still the most critical thing, and that's the beauty of optometry. We have time to spend with the patient, that we can develop those relationships and those friendships.
Right.
When I see my patients when they leave Dr. Amans or Dr. Matsui, they're like their best friends, you know, and they build that kind of relationship, and those patients will come back.
Okay. How many generations have you seen so far in your?
I'm on my fourth generation now. Yeah, the ones I saw originally were parents. Now they're grandparents and their kids, and their kids, and their grandkids now. So it's wonderful when you get to see when you see that, and you build that trust with them over the years, and you get to see them growing up and bringing their own kids in. It's very rewarding. That's the beauty, I think, of optometry. Is we build those relationships over time.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's cool when you see them for every annual exam. You ask them what's new. They say, you know, I had another kid, or they just got married, and so it's kind of it's good to see their milestones as they grow with us.
As a side note, you know, optometry is the least sued medical profession, and it's because of the relationship that we build. If people don't sue their friends. Now, sometimes people can mess up because, you know, we're not perfect, but they're less likely, or they're likely to be more forgiving, or less likely to sue because they have a relationship with that doctor. And we're fortunate as optometrists, we're one of the few medical professions that have that time that we get to build those relationships and those friendships with our patients. So we're very fortunate in that regard.
Yeah. Okay, so what is the most commonly asked questions from your students as a practice management professor?
Well, the first most common comment I get is, I should have paid more attention in your class.
That's so true.
That's all. They always say that. It's one of the first things they say when they call me. Most of them now they're involved in purchasing a practice, so they want to know some of the tips about evaluating it again. The interesting with optometry practice, they're all so unique. You can visit my practice, you can go down the street and see someone else's. There's a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences as well. So a lot of it's the different nuances, so they'll ask me to help evaluate the practice for its value. So that's probably one of the more common things. Or their leases. Now they're going into a lease arrangement. They like me to look at their leases. So those are probably the more common ones, a little bit more complex, so that they ask me to help them out with.
Do they ever ask you if you think they should buy, or if they should start cold, or what do you advise them? I
rarely recommend opening cold, especially here in Southern California, because it's quite expensive. I help them do that all the time, though. So you're usually going to spend $250,000 to open up cold. For that same money, you can buy a practice doing about $400,000, already has a patient base that you could grow on. So I encourage them to try to buy something existing for that same money, and then improve it over time. But if you go on somewhere else in other parts of the country where there's no optometrist, then opening cold makes sense as well.
So just curious, how many of your existing students that went to go on to open cold, how many are successful, or how many had to close and then bought a practice? Or
none of them I know have closed. All of them,
that's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just takes longer, to build. So that's the thing. Eventually they all get there. With optometry, we're very low risk for a bank, so eventually we make it. But it takes a lot more work initially. You open up cold, usually working outside 2 or 3 days a week so you can pay your bills. And then slowly you build that practice over time. But all of them have been successful. I don't know anybody who's closed.
That's good.
So knock on wood, that's been a very positive. But to be successful, the bigger the better. So I tell them, if you go to buy a practice, a lot of times they're intimidated, but it's safer to buy $1 million practice than to buy a $200,000, $300,000 practice in gross revenues. The little one will take a lot more work for less money.
That's actually a question I was going to ask you. Would you recommend somebody to invest a lot more for a higher grossing practice rather than save money at the front end by buying a cheaper practice? But
bigger is always better in this case. It is. And the banks would rather lend you $800,000 on a $1.2 million practice than $200,000 on a $300,000 practice. The little one has more risk, even though it's smaller, because there's less cash flow to serve. Ideally, it's best to buy into a partnership, because then the other existing partners are there to make sure you're successful. So ideally, the best way to be successful quickly is to buy into a huge practice, a partnership, and then the other doctors that I mentioned are there to see that you're successful. service the debt.
Okay.
So I helped one of my students who just graduated last year with the Visual and Credit Union. We often we use to help purchase the practice. The practice he bought for 1.2 million, and he bought the building as well for $1 million.
Okay.
So
That's
he hasn't
a
even been out of
purchase.
school just a year now.
Yeah.
And so he took out a lot of debt.
Okay.
You know, whatever it was, $2.2 million. He's doing great. He's making twice what the average optometrist makes
Excellent.
1 year out of school,
Okay.
even after paying his debt.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
So bigger is oftentimes better.
Was he able to pay off his student loans yet then? Is that
No, so that's
right
just
out
another one of his
school?
debts, you know, so, and he had quite a bit. So he had
Wow.
over 200,000 in debt,
Right.
and he's still able to get the loan. That's probably be another question. Say, well, can I get a loan even though I have $200,000 in debt? And you can. That doesn't hinder it, because they're going to sell it or purchase or finance the practice rather based on the cash flow of the practice itself.
Okay.
So if you have $200,000 in debt, they'll loan you the money, but the practice has to be doing maybe $700,000, so it can service that debt along with your school debt and their living expenses as well.
Got it. Okay.
So.
Would you recommend Vision One as a lender?
I do. I think they're very good because they specialize in optometry practice.
Okay.
So you kind of have a third set of eyes looking at the deal to make sure it makes financial sense.
Yeah, so
They
they
won't
kind of
loan you.
represent both the buyer and the seller to make sure that they're protected, right?
Yeah,
So-
well, especially the buyer because it's their money
Right,
that they're going to loan.
right.
So they'll make sure that it makes financial sense for the buyer.
Okay.
So they can
That's
do
good.
that. Yeah, so they've been very, very good.
Okay.
Most of them, even Wells Fargo has stepped up. They're fairly good now in offering very competitive loans.
Okay.
But usually we lean towards the Visual and Credit Union because that's all they do, and they specialize in that. So if they see something unusual, they can bring that to the attention of the buyer to make sure that those things are worked out so they're successful.
Do you know who runs Vision One?
Sure. Bob Schultz is the CEO.
Okay.
So he's been there many years now, and he's very, very helpful.
Is he an optometrist as well?
He's not. So he's a
Okay.
finance person.
Okay.
But he specializes in optometric practices.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
didn't
in
know
fact,
that.
he has an exceptional pamphlet that came out about the lifeline of optometry practice financially. Like, when should you bring on an associate? When should you buy a building? When should you remodel? And I'll get a copy of that to you that you can have it
Yeah,
available
would love that. Thank
to
you.
to your followers as well.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah.
one of the best articles I've seen that outlines the financial growth and production of optometric practice.
Okay.
So I'll get that to you.
Yeah, thank
Sorry.
you.
You bet.
All right. Sorry, my computer keeps
Mhm.
sleeping. Okay. Well, I guess this is a little bit related to that. How often do you see one of your former students with $1 million practice not purchasing it, so
Mhm.
like growing it to
You know,
$1
a fair amount of
million?
time. I mean, I see them fairly often, more than you think, but usually it's not till they've been out, maybe 10 to 15 years. And that's when they get to be the peak of what their production is, and we see that not too unusual.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the average, I think, about 600,000 that you alluded to. And I think the reason is most people are very comfortable at that point. You know, that it's a nice, steady patient flow. The doctor maybe makes about a third of that, or $200,000. They're very comfortable, so they just leave it there. It kind of plateaus, and and they're happy. And that's probably why I think that's about the average. The other reason is you get some who are a little more aggressive, may have group practice, they gross more. But you have those new practices as well, or the doctors who are getting ready to retire, and then those practices are smaller because they're just working part-time.
Right.
That's probably why the average is 600.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just thinking about that number, it seems like I think it's easy to grow it to there. Like I
Right.
think I hit that number maybe in my third year or second year
Right,
out.
yes.
And so it is very comfortable there.
Sure.
But I think you just have to have that drive to like push it
Right.
over to,
You do.
yeah.
And you have to look at things a little bit differently. The average doctor could probably generate maybe 7 or 750 by themselves. So to get to $1 million, you really have to have a second person there,
Right.
associate or something as well, or provide extra services or things like that to really make it to that next level.
Do you think it's a good time to bring them in when you feel like you're tapped out in terms of time, or would you suggest bringing them in earlier to kind of push through that, I guess, glass ceiling?
You want to bring them in too soon, but you want to bring them in when you get fairly full to capacity by yourself,
Yeah.
or you have life changes. Maybe you want, you have a child or something, you want to work less. That might be a good time to bring them in.
Yeah.
So I always recommend don't they go, well, they're expensive. Well, they should pay for themselves.
Right.
So initially just bring them in for 1 day a week. And as you get busier, then you can bring them into 2 days a week. And that's what I did with the associates in Norwalk initially. And then I just kept expanding their time or bringing other associates. So now I work 2 days a week and I have them working the rest of the time. When I started off, I was 6 days a week. It was just me, and you try to pay the bills. You know, that's a great question. Most private practices are never advertised. So the best thing to do is go to an area where you want to practice and then network. Going to the Optometric Society meetings in that area, Vision Source meetings with independent practitioners. That's probably where you're going to hear about most of the practices that are for sale, because as I mentioned, 80% are never advertised. It's just word of mouth. So you want to make sure you go and utilize those resources, and network is probably the best way to find a practice. Ironically, I just got contacted last week from 3 different doctors who want to sell their practice. None of them are advertised. So it's just word of mouth, because they know I'm connected with the school and will know some of the graduates who might be interested. The business tip is what I share with the other graduates as well, or when you buy a practice, pay yourself first. Sometimes we pay all of our bills and then we wait till whatever's left over at the end of the month. What I find is pay yourself first, then there'll be enough funds to pay all your bills, but don't neglect your own personal needs as well. So I would do that. Also, always put the patient's needs first, and then money will take care of itself. And the other thing I guess I would let myself know, or others know, that there's a lot of resources out there. You don't have to do it alone. Talk to your colleagues or find a mentor or other doctors locally. They're always happy to help new practitioners. So utilize those resources. Also, Doctors Alliance groups like Vision Source and others have tremendous resources available to help you be successful. The 2 things that come to mind, one professionally is the Optos. I can do the optomap that scans 200 degrees on the back of the patient's eyes, preventing me from having to dilate as often. Patients are impressed with that. It saves us time and it's very, very helpful. A little more on the fun side would be our fish tank. Kids love the fish tank, and it keeps them entertained while their other siblings are getting their eye test, and they just love that. So those would probably be the 2 most I don't say impressive, but the things that the patients enjoy the most. Probably the one I shared earlier about putting, the patient's needs first. Always do what's in the best interest of the patients, and you'll be successful, and they can sense that, and the patients appreciate it when you're honest up front and just do what's in their best interest. Well, it doesn't have to be complex. There's a lot of very complicated business books. I like the simple ones that we have the students read, just Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or The Richest Man in Babylon. Those are books you can read in a couple of hours, but they have basic business sense and acumen that can be very helpful to you. I just got some wireless earbuds, so I enjoy those because I can use them for various activities. When you're exercising, you can use them on the plane. That's probably my best. I utilize those probably more than any other things I bought recently.